of John O'Keefe Jr. and Margaret or Peggy O'Keefe. He was a brother to Paul O'Keefe and to his sister, Kristen Furbush. Kristen was married, and so John's brother-in-law was a man named Stephen Furbush, and they had two children who were very young in 2013. Now, in 2013, Kristen, unfortunately, tragically, passed away, succumbing to cancer in November of 2013. Within months of that, Mr. O'Keefe's brother-in-law and Kristen's husband, Stephen, passed away as well. Now, initially, when John O'Keefe's sister passed away, sort of the initial plan for that situation was that John O'Keefe was going to move in with Stephen Furbush and the kids and assist as far as raising them. And then when Stephen passed away a few months after his wife, before those plans could be finalized, John O'Keefe then moved in with his niece and nephew and assumed the parental role and assumed legal guardianship with respect to both of those children. Now, he was assisted in this by a great number of people within the town of Canton where the Furbushes lived and where John moved into, the home with the two children there. There were other parents within the neighborhood, other parents within the children's age group. You'll hear from a number of them over the course of this trial, but they included Mrs. Kerry Roberts and Mrs. Jennifer McKay. They helped Mr. O'Keefe out during those initial stages and during the time that he assumed this role. He also got help from his work. John O'Keefe was a proud member of the Boston Police Department, had been for many years. He had been a patrolman prior to moving in with the children and assuming this role. Boston Police Department helped him greatly as far as transitioning him to more of a desk role, working in the sex offender unit with more regular hours to sort of assimilate himself to this new life and this new role that he assumes with his children. Initially, John O'Keefe lived in the house with the kids. However, in 2018, they moved into a new home, sort of a new home that they could have as their own. That home is located also within the town of Canton, sort of on the Stoughton side of Canton at One Meadows Avenue. John O'Keefe raised these children, assuming guardianship for them for about 8 years. His niece, who was the elder of the two, was about 14 at the time that John O'Keefe died, and his nephew was about 11 years old at the time that John O'Keefe died. January 28th, 2022. It was a relatively typical day. It was a Friday going into a Saturday of January 29th. Sort of typical in the sense of most sort of suburban parents. There were a lot of activities, weekend sports, practices, games, things of that nature that the O'Keefe and Furbush family had to look forward to. One little difference when it came to that particular day of January 28th and the 29th is the weather. So there had been predicted and there was going to be a snowstorm, an insignificant a blizzard essentially was coming in overnight that Friday and the Saturday, lasting through most of the day on Saturday the 29th. And as a result of that, most of those sort of typical, weekend routine activities that would keep most people, including those within the town of Canton, busy, have been canceled ahead of time. Everybody knew what was coming. Everybody knew essentially you weren't going to leave your house all that much the following day. Now, also on January 28th, Mr. O'Keefe had received some news in respect to his niece. So his niece and her best friend were in 8th grade at the time, going into high school in the fall of 2022. They both applied to a private school called Bishop, and they both.
All right, welcome. Young Jurks kicking off a couple minutes early. I figured I would just get right into the video from today, the opening statements of the Karen Reed trial. Since we're early and ready to go, we got our guest in the green room. Adam Lally, the prosecutor today, not getting the best online reviews of his performance, even from the folks that have been his biggest cheerleaders. I'm noticing not getting a lot of support for this performance today. Let's bring in the legal experts and let's bring my friend Mazza Media up. Let's bring them up right now. Returning, we have a criminal defense attorney who is also a former prosecutor, an assistant DA, with the Manhattan office in New York City. Mark Bederow, attorney Mark Bederow. Welcome back to the show.
How are you? Nice to be back.
And Mazza Media, what's up, brother?
Good evening, Mike. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Very big day today. Very big day.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, if you're on the free Karen Reed side, you have a lot to be happy about, I feel like, today.
That's for sure. There's no question about that. Lally tanked in court, so he had a bad day.
I've seen, I don't know, maybe thousands of opening statements in my life. I've given them. I've sat across from them. I've trained ADAs, watched them give them, read them in transcripts. It's an everyday thing for us. And I have to tell you, based upon what I saw today, in 25 years, given the gravity of the case, the emotion in the case and everything, I think I can state with complete confidence that was absolutely the most pathetic, worthless, boring, and ineffective summation by a prosecutor imaginable. And I was speechless after I saw this. And he's presumably, again, the best they have. I mean, this is the biggest case they're ever going to have. And he had no emotion. He had no plan to lead the jurors along in a way to captivate them. He probably put them to sleep, because I didn't doze off, but I think I lost focus a few times like everyone else. He spent a good 15 of his 35 minutes talking about nothing important in the grand scheme of the trial. He buried the lead, as they say. I think it took him until the last 5 minutes before he mentioned what he claims the evidence will be, related to the vehicle, things of that nature. And it was just awful. And if you can even remember 90% of what he said, that's more than I can. Terrible.
God, it didn't pick up well on the phones or the tablets. Like he was not as assertive or vocal. His voice didn't carry like David Yannetti's voice carried. I mean, David Yannetti grabbed everyone's attention. The first sentence was, Karen Reed was framed.
Well, that's what you do. You punch them in the mouth, you grab them. And of course, Lally left them an opening because they needed to be jolted awake and pay attention. But I think you're being kind to Lally, believe it or not. I mean, I would, they should have checked him for a pulse throughout this. I mean, you're talking about a murder case of this much importance, given the severity of the case, the emotion and everything that's been going on, and to just sit there and like a drone. I mean, it was as if he was reading legislative bills rather than giving an opening statement in a murder case. And you want these jurors to feel confident. We talked about this even looking at what he was when we were critiquing them last night, how he was performing. And he looked better then than he did today. I don't know what it was, but it was terrible. And I think if you talk to anyone who does this for a living, they'll tell you whatever they think of this case, that was stunning, how bad it was, and how little confidence he had in what he's saying. And again, with the white knuckling of the podium and the holding the pen and the flipping the pad, look the jurors in the eyes, man. Tell them what you're going to prove, instead of talking about how, what everybody ordered to drink at a bar and the name of the pizza place where they went to do this. And then it was snowing. And what I mean by snowing is that it wasn't a blizzard yet, but the weather reports were bad. And then it was bad. Awful. Terrible. In case you couldn't guess, I thought it was pretty bad.
It was bad. It really was. Even to a lay person like any of us watching, a lot of us, it was just like, you couldn't even follow what he was saying. Where's the meat of it? Like you said,
well,
he kept it all at the end, what he actually had.
And again, I don't know if it speaks worse about that office, about their training or whatever, but you learn when you're a kid DA, also you need a theme. You have to present a theme to a jury. You've got to hold their hand and throughout the case, use your theme. You use it in your opening. You try to go back to it during your examinations of witnesses, and you circle back in summation. And this guy didn't offer any theme or anything. He just droned on about, well, this witness is going to say this, and then you'll hear from this person and this person. And then if you're still awake, the car was going 20 something miles an hour, and he was hit, and this and that. And, I'm going to speak to you twice. And, I get to do this twice. I mean, what an opening line. I get a chance to speak to you twice. That's really, grabbing them by the cuffs, smacking them in the face and saying, have I got something to tell you? I mean, you want to tell a story, preview. And he did none of that. It was just surprisingly bad.
It was. And David Yannetti, I mentioned his name, was so good. It was so like that.
Yeah.
We were talking about this before we started. Like, should we play a lot of Lally to beginning and then, just play Yannetti, or should we just play Yannetti? Because it puts you to sleep, the one side, and then the other
Lulls
side.
you to sleep. Adam,
Yeah.
lull you to sleep, Lally.
He did, kind of what we thought he would do, and he did it well. He grabbed the jurors right away. He, unlike Lally, gave the impression, I believe in what I'm saying. I mean, he came off as, I really believe this, and I'm going to hold your hand and tell you why you should as well. So,
is that my phone, or whose phone is it?
Banging here, yeah.
Oh,
is that mine?
I'm not sure.
Is it yours? I
don't
keep looking at mine, and I can't figure it out. Like, I thought I turned mine off.
He was, weaving in his theory, which is, he said within the first 3 seconds, this is a frame job. And, one of the other things I thought was interesting that the prosecutor didn't do, when you have some real skeletons in your closet, I mean, bad ones, I mean, like Proctor sized problems with, now that, we know what that is, you may want to think about deflating the balloon a little bit and trying to explain that you're going to hear some things, but, keep an open mind. It won't matter because of all this evidence. And he completely yielded that floor to the defense to just pound that away and just crush them with that. And the impact is just, it's terrible. I mean, at the end of the opening summations, you're thinking, my God, this woman got framed. And, Yannetti did something else, which lawyers can do if they can get away with it, which is argue. You're not supposed to really argue in a summation, but of course, it's a sharp elbow business. And if you don't object, you can pretty much do what you want if the other guy doesn't object. And so he made his points. He made a nice timeline, I thought, about when this would have happened. And in my view, probably previewed a theory that something happened in that house, or shortly before 2:30, unlike the 12:30 timeline that they were using. Something terrible happened. They didn't know what to do. They made some weird phone calls that we know were deleted. They had McCabe, who wasn't there, look up, well, how long would it take him if we, put him outside, kind of thing. And then he ended up outside, and they weaved in the snowplow beautifully to really draw emphasis on that timeline and say it couldn't have been before this because he saw this. And then when he came back, he saw the Ford Edge, which of course implies that something dastardly was going on, and they had to have somebody come back there to help take care of this nasty business, which was apparently throwing Mr. O'Keefe out in the lawn. I think the defense did a great job. I think the prosecution is what we thought. A lot of us thought they were going to have a lot of problems, but I don't think any of us thought the Proctor problems were going to be this bad. And it's a double pronged problem for them because, number one, the guy's a dirtbag. I mean, that you just, whatever you think about the case, by the way, I'd love to get Wendy's opinion about this, given that he's searching for nudes, which is, just disgusting. You have a guy who is a lecherous pig, illegally searching her phone, by the way, potentially reviewing privileged communication. So he's breaking the law. He's violating, her Fourth Amendment rights. Of course, anything on that phone would be inadmissible or should be as a result. He's damaged goods. So already he's got problems. And that's without even mentioning the text messages about, don't worry about this guy. He's good. He's a Boston cop. That is just bombshell stuff. That's not just he's a friend and he's in Facebook pictures and he's helping out his buddies. This is him talking to his other buddies saying, don't worry, this guy doesn't have a problem because he's one of us. And when it turns out that he may be the guy who, gathered the evidence related to the car, which, in some world could be deemed problematic for the defense, other things being equal, if you didn't know some of the things that you knew, but that they can potentially establish that this guy might have lied in the search warrant application, had early access to the car and done some dastardly things. And then, we know Chief Wiggum did what he did. Where are they going here? Where does the prosecution go from here? I mean, it feels after an opening statement that they're already on the mat or getting a standing 8 count. And that's not a good way to start.
Crazy, isn't it? It's unbelievable. Just like we thought. And it's funny to see some of the big cheerleaders on social media even calling out Lally, but they still think they're right. It's so funny. It's just like he's got no case too. That's the other part of it, and he knows it. I think at this point,
I don't know if I don't know who this guy is, but he just looks defeated every time he talks in court. And I'm trying to understand how a decent sized DA's office that in a case like this, knowing the problems they have, knowing these issues, knowing what the public thinks about this, knowing that never mind the Boston media, the national media is watching, and elected officials care about this stuff. And Morrissey, let's not kid ourselves. This guy is looking at every news article, complaining about it. In the past, we know he's made unethical public statements that could have prejudiced Karen Reed's right to a fair trial in violation of every state's ethical rules. They're paying attention to this stuff. They knew they were going to get clobbered on Proctor and all these other issues. If nothing else, you would have think they could have got an articulate and skilled advocate to at least address this. And it appears they haven't.
On our last conversation, we talked about the judge and some things that you said that I agreed with. And Mazza I think, was a little surprised, but he actually took it to social media and was, I think, comforted by your statements about the judge. But I saw a lot of pushback even still. But today, I think it proved you were right. You were on the right track, attorney. She allowed in the opening statement, she didn't challenge the attorney, Yannetti. She let him go today, didn't she?
She did, although, and I agree. I mean, she could have stepped in on her own on the third party culprit thing, which, I think they probably were toeing the line and dipped their toe over it a few times. But again, the judge is not necessarily in a position where she should step in if the prosecutor won't protect his own position. And he didn't. I mean, he sat there like a potted plant, which could also, is he timid? Is he a timid advocate? Is he afraid to look? Normally, you never object in opening statements. It doesn't mean you can't, but most lawyers will tell you, I really want to avoid objecting in an opening, and I want to avoid objecting in a closing. You better have a damn good reason to do it. And if you object, it better be sustained so I don't look like a fool and look like I'm complaining. And, if he did object on the third party and said, Judge, can we approach out of the presence of the jury, and said, he's violating your order, you know what? She might have sustained that. She might have warned Yannetti and told him, we're not doing this. But if Lally's going to sit on his hands and, scribble on his pad and do nothing, then the judge shouldn't get into it. I mean, he's representing the Commonwealth. He's their advocate, allegedly. It's up to him to do it. And he didn't do it. And, their case will suffer as a result. And I mean, I don't think there's going to be any miracles and this is just going to stop going forward. He is what he is. I mean,
exactly.
I think the first time you and I talked about this, I gave you my belief just based on what I had seen so far, even this was a week or two ago, that he looks like he's outgunned. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's obviously the evidence is going to control. the facts, the law are going to determine the outcome. But if you can have the better lawyers in the case, you want that. And Karen Reed has that. There's no question. Everybody thinks that, of course, except the Wendy Murphys, who think that Yannetti convicted her today and, committed malpractice.
We'll put Wendy Murphy's screen capture up on the screen again. But before we discuss that part of it, I think it was for me, I felt a little more relieved that I think this judge isn't going to get too over involved in this case. Like, I feel like she's playing it fair, and that's all we need is for this judge to be fair. And I feel like she is being fair. Actually, I think people on the Karen Reed side need to. I know this judge hasn't been perfect for so many reasons, but in the end, if she does what she did today, I think we're good.
I want to say this carefully and respectfully, because you never want to be in a position to tell people, because I know there are so many people that are into this who are just really dedicated to what they think is just an outrageous miscarriage of justice. And, I tend to agree. I always have, although I still look at it as a reasonable doubt thing, because that's lawyers are programmed to think, what do I need to do? And you even saw Yannetti mention that you don't have to solve the crime. You have to, determine whether there's reasonable doubt. But so what I say now, I don't want to sound, listen to lawyers who know better. And, if you're not a lawyer, you don't know what you're talking about. This is not what I'm trying to say right now. But I will say, when you hear the people that do this for a living and tell you that a judge who doesn't rule your way on every question, who sometimes can sound pissy, annoying, obnoxious, unfair, I'm telling you, this happens in every case. And you just have to go forward. And the rulings themselves that we talked about, I didn't think they were terrible. And as you just said, if she was as awful as everybody thought, she could have on her own or sua sponte and, big lawyer words, jumped in and said, I'm going to sustain the objection that Mr. Lally is not making. And then she would say, everyone come up to the bench, kick the jury or kick the jury out would be more likely. And then say to Yannetti, what the hell are you doing? I told you don't do this. She didn't do that. She let him go. And that's, I agree with you. That's a good sign.
And she didn't even warn him after the fact, she could have even been, she just, I agree. Like, I think there wasn't a reason to act in the end, but
if
she could have, I could definitely see some judges being too overbearing on that. And I'm glad she wasn't.
She can do whatever she wants. It's her courtroom. But at the end of the day, most judges, unless you are so far out of bounds, I mean, saying things that are just so unfair or anything like that, are not going to jump in on their own and do it. So I would encourage anyone watching and following this, judge isn't your problem. The problem here is just, you got to get through this. And there are highs and lows, and, it'll feel uncomfortable at times. There are going to be witnesses who say things that, could make Karen look bad, or, for a minute say, well, if that's true, is she in trouble? And what you have to do is, not overanalyze it, every skirmish that leads to every battle to win the war, because there is so much reasonable doubt here. We always suspected that there was, but the reasonable doubt, we talked about the investigation and how corrupt and or incompetent it was, could be a basis of reasonable doubt without more. I feel even stronger about that after learning what we learned about Proctor, because again, it's a double whammy. And I can't tell you enough how devastating this is to a prosecutor's case, that the guy, on top of being just a grade A dirtbag of dirtbags. Okay. I mean, no one is going to respect his behavior. He violated the law. He did all these illegal things. And then he basically is bragging to his friends that, don't worry about the Alberts. They're covered. I mean, and one of the things, just to circle back from last night, because I feel stronger in this now, is, I said last night that I don't know how this case even got indicted. I don't. I can understand why they would investigate. I can understand why they would believe in the beginning phases of the case that Karen Reed is a suspect, in the sense that if she did make a statement about, I hurt him or I did this, which I think they're blowing way out of proportion and taking way too much, or putting way too much oxygen into that kind of thing. But, any real prosecutor, and certainly the way that we were trained, in the so-called law and order DA's office, was you didn't indict people for serious crimes until, not just if you had a little evidence against them or even enough to get an indictment. I mean, you may or may not know the famous expression. You ask a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich and it will. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about. But a real prosecutor will not present a case unless they think that there is not only sufficient evidence to get an indictment, but that there is sufficient evidence that will warrant a conviction. And I can satisfy myself that I have excluded every other possibility and that I'm not indicting an innocent person. And the problem here is, what in the hell did they ever do to satisfy themselves that we have an open and shut case, or a strong case anyway, that she backed into him, left him for dead and all of that, without knowing all of these weird things about the Alberts, the McCabe's, and the deleting of evidence, the timeline that was established today, the Proctor relationship, all of this stuff. I mean, to never go into that house and search is just insane. I mean, as a matter of law enforcement, as a matter of investigation, how could they do that? So they're in a lot of trouble. I don't know how they expect to salvage this. If, you have to assume, by the way, an opening statement is not the time to hold back. Okay. You're going to lay out the case as you have it. There's no wild card smoking gun here. Whatever Lally had, he told you about. And I think what he told you about is, well, we think the car had to be going this speed and whatnot. And, we have what we think is hair and a cocktail glass in the car. But you also have a corrupt dirtbag who's violating the law, is going, look, the guy should have been fired, a year ago, right? Which I want to talk about in a minute. All these problems with him, but he's doing a lot of the key investigative work. And then you just keep going back to, but nope, right? That expression that what he texted about, his buddy. How are they going to recover from that? And when we saw yesterday too, this discussion about whether this evidence against Proctor should come in, and what should the defense be allowed to elicit, in the sense of whether he has a problem or whether he's under investigation, and look at the credibility and integrity in hindsight, now that we know what we're talking about, of what Lally said yesterday. What did he say? We don't even know what the outcome is. It's unfounded. We don't know what's going to happen. Let me give you a little news flash. Okay. The guy's a dirty cop who is a pig, who was in essence committing a form of sexual abuse, or trying to, bragging to his friends that I want to get nude pictures of a defendant fighting for her life. And he wants to share them with his friends. He's telling his friends, I hope she kills herself. He's illegally searching her phone. He's doing all these other things.
Looking for the nudes is what.
Looking for the nudes. And the reason why ultimately this guy is toast, on top of all that, is what prosecutor, when this case is over, would ever call him as a witness ever again, given that he probably lied in the federal grand jury, as we've heard before, in terms of denying knowing them. We know what he did in terms of the sex stuff with Karen, but from a lawyer's standpoint, a prosecutor's standpoint, what they're going to be concerned about is what he did about illegally searching her phone and digging potentially through attorney-client, communications, because future defendants are looking at this guy as, not only is he a liar, and yeah, he's a pig, but the real problem is this is a guy who will deliberately and intentionally violate someone's civil rights. That's what he did.
Exactly.
Okay? Illegally.
What else will he do? What else will he do? Right.
Right. So what's going to happen is this: the guy is useless as a police officer going forward. Okay. Which of course makes him useless to a police department. He's going to get fired. There's no question. He's toast. The other thing that's going to happen is Now I know, Norfolk County doesn't have a gazillion criminal cases a year and wherever, or he's a state police, so maybe he goes elsewhere. But how many convicted defendants in which Proctor was the key investigator are calling their lawyers, are talking about hiring in investigators and doing all of these other things and say, I want my case reinvestigated either in a conviction review unit. I want to file a post-conviction motion. I want to look for evidence that this scumbag did something to me. And do you think this is the first time? Maybe, but probably not.
It's coming. I mean, that's what I would be doing if I had a case. If if anyone's out there and you had some
He is
Proctor
useless
as a
going
call
forward.
us. We want to hear about it.
He is useless going forward. He's going to get fired, and Lally knows that. Now, look, is it true that at the time they were making this argument that he had not yet been fired, or we don't know? Sure, but there's no chance this guy is staying on. Zero. And let's not underestimate the other thing, which is I hope she kills herself. What the hell is that? What kind of sick lunatic is this guy who, even if you think, you want to make her the patsy, which it looks like they did, do you have no empathy? You really think she did this on purpose, even if you think that she was responsible? It doesn't make any sense, nor does the DA's theory. What is their theory? That she killed him because, wait for it, they fought?
Yeah, they fought and they cheated on each other. That's where it looks like he's going with it. Mazza Media, you've been quiet for a while. What do you got on the judge or anything else that we just talked about?
Well, Lally had an absolutely horrible day. I mean, he may as well have just have kicked the field goal wide right in Super Bowl 25 against the New York Giants and hand the Giants the Super Bowl in the process, because that's basically what he did. Not only was he a horrible attorney, he didn't even try, and it was laughable all day long at his lack of effort. One of the things I always question about any attorney in court is the order of which they want to call people on the stand. And when he brought Paul O'Keefe on the stand, first thing, with his very first, person he called up there's no purpose to this. It's not driven. It's not focused. It's not calibrated. Everything he does, where is he going? What kind of questions is he asking? What's the purpose of this? And he even had Paul O'Keefe saying nice, flattering things about Karen Reed, including in the hospital, about basically giving testimony that Karen Reed was showing concern for John O'Keefe at Good Samaritan Hospital. Literally, Adam Lally called Paul O'Keefe, asked him questions, and Paul O'Keefe was giving answers that were favorable to Karen Reed and her defense team. Yeah.
I think
even the wife of what was her name?
Erin
Erin
O'Keefe.
Yeah, she even described Karen, it seemed like, positively.
I think, though, they have no alternative, in the sense this is the hand they've been dealt. I mean, this case is a loser. It was always going to be a loser. And I can tell you this, it's not uncommon in a murder case to come out of the gate with a family member of the deceased just to try to, humanize and just put a real...
That's what I thought their approach was. It was an empathy attempt.
Yes. Now,
right.
Again, when the empathy attempt turns into, well, we kind of like her, actually, or did,
right.
And that's fine. But the real problem is, if you're going to put a witness on, like a family member, and it is an attempt at empathy, whether it's going to work or not that they wouldn't be sympathetic towards Mr. O'Keefe. I mean, how could you not be? But the problem is, if you're going to do that, then, my God, man, make an opening that at least already has the jury knowing the goods are coming. I mean, you don't want to follow up a half asleep, boring word salad opening that nobody knows what you're talking about, and then come out of the gate and call a witness who has, in a substantive sense, nothing to offer. And the best takeaway is, well, we like her and they didn't really fight that much. As far as we knew. And that whole theory about the fighting is, again, it's weak and stupid. And you can see Smart lawyers know when to cross and when not, and they made absolutely the correct decision. You don't need to cross-examine unless there's a reason to. I know people were asking earlier today, why didn't they cross-examine this guy? And the answer is there's no reason to. He gave you what you needed. He didn't move the ball forward for the prosecution. The prosecutor's clumsy direct examination gave you what you needed. Next.
Yeah, there was 2 of those today, 2 in a
Yep.
row, and it was just the same thing. But it's funny because then they got to the third, which was a police officer, and we didn't get to see the cross. And now tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., now we get to see this police officer get crossed, and people are already speculating some of the questions that they're going to ask him, which I could see, like his report doesn't seem to match his testimony.
Well, let me ask you this. I didn't see his testimony, and this would be a critical thing for me. This is the first responding officer, literally, that finds O'Keefe in the snow and the women,
Correct.
Karen freaking out and McCabe doing whatever she's doing.
Yes.
Okay, and his body camera was activated. This guy. Did they introduce that?
He not a
It was
body
out of the
camera,
cruiser.
but cruiser cameras.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand there's testimony in which, she's blaming herself. I did this. I killed him or whatever. Is that picked up on the camera?
Not
It
really.
did
You
not.
hear some yelling, but not like that. No.
Yeah.
Then this is another, own goal by the DA, and they're going to walk right into it because they think it's going to be compelling to say she's making statements which sound
Let me ask you this, because this is what we've noted, is that his statements in the reporting made it sound one way, like that she was asking a question. Today, he seemed more definitive. So his statements in his written report are not matching the statements he made on the stand today. It seems like he's changed his testimony a cop right there. I mean,
it's problematic, and of course, the cross-examination will tend to be on one level, that when you wrote this down, it was fresh in your mind, your memory was better, and that, in other words, whatever you wrote down or didn't write down was an accurate summary of what happened then, as opposed to now where you're adding a little, if you will. Look, the reality is it's going to play right into the defense hands again, because if the statement is not on the camera that we talked about, which is why I asked, because that would make it less significant to me if it was not in the police report. Okay. But if it turns out you can't pick it up on the car video, it's not in his initial report, but he's saying, but I remember she said this. What's fascinating is if the defendant who's sitting at the table on trial for murder makes a statement in the presence of a police officer who first arrives to the scene and is arguably making what lawyers call admissions of guilt, which I don't believe that is in this context, by the way. But if you believed it would be, I think we can all agree that is the kind of thing that a diligent police officer would, wait for it, write down. That's kind of a big deal if she's running around saying, I killed him, or I did this, or this is my fault. So again, it's going to play right into the defense theory that these are Keystone cops. Nobody knows what they're doing. It doesn't mean the first responding cop is part of any conspiracy. He would be the least likely. Okay. Somebody calls 911. There's a man dead or dying in the snow. I wouldn't assume that the first responding cop is, how do I frame the first woman I see? That may be a bridge too far, but competence, how did we go from, I didn't write this down, to I remember it now? How did this get into your mind? Did the DA suggest it? I don't know. Did other cops tell you it happened? I don't know.
What, over 800 days later?
Exactly.
Calling all this? Yeah.
Is it, I just didn't write it down, counselor, but I remember it now, and then you just go with it? I don't know. Either way, it's not impressive. And again, these are the people with the burden of proof, and they're just flailing. I mean, they're getting a standing 8 count. I keep going back to this, like right out of the gate. It's horrible.
We have a couple of questions from Luna's mom.
Sure.
One came in. She said, Mark, what do you think what should happen to Michael Proctor, the state police?
Well, in the first instance, he should be terminated, obviously. He is not qualified to be a law enforcement officer. That's number one. Number two, he very well could be the subject of what lawyers call a 1983 lawsuit, a federal civil rights lawsuit under 42 USC 1983. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that if Karen Reed wants to sue him when this sordid affair is over, for intentionally violating her civil rights, specifically by violating her Fourth Amendment right to be free from unlawful searches and seizures. And this idiot is just going through her phone, knowing that he needs a warrant to do so, not doing so. I mean, what did he see on her phone? I mean, that's, you know, that's not just about the criminal case, that's violative. That's so that's certainly a problem with him. That's at a minimum what he's facing, but there ought to be an internal affairs investigation. They ought to look to see if he's done this before, and then arguably he could. Now, look, they've said that he's not a target of a federal prosecution, or that's what his lawyer says. That's what he says. I'm not going to assume that his lawyer is lying. I don't know who he is, and I believe most lawyers who, you know, would get involved in something this serious would not literally say, the feds tell me he's, you know, not a target, if that's not what they told him. But, you know, he could have committed federal civil rights crimes as well, again, given that he intentionally violated her rights. And we don't know what else he's done. So it could be the tip of the iceberg with this guy. We don't know, but he ought to be investigated. He ought to be fired. He ought to be bracing for a civil lawsuit. And I'll tell you something. If I'm his lawyer, if this guy had come to me and said, this is my problem, I would strongly consider we're taking the fifth and tell the DA, find another way if you're going to try this case. Yeah, you know, the DA is going to blame me if the case goes sideways, but I would be concerned if I am Proctor about what I'm going to say, because there is I mean, we have to believe, based on Yannetti's opening, that there is documentation of all of these things that are being alleged. And we certainly know that they have a grand jury transcript, which I'm going to believe demonstrates that at least initially he was not exactly telling the truth about his relationship with the Alberts. You know, you have the other law enforcement guy who is out there, you know, allegedly scrubbed his phone when he was told not to. I mean, this is terrible stuff. And so he ought to be fired. He may very well be sued. And I'll tell you something, if this guy is working as an active duty police officer right now, I don't know how they could do it. I don't know what the judge would do, but I would damn well try to get that in front of the jury, that, you know, and here we are. And this crooked, sexist, pig, corrupt, every other word you can come up with, tomorrow wake up and say it's just another day conducting law enforcement. And, you know, what is the DA going to do? Vouch for his credibility in the summation and say that, you know, he's a credible and reliable witness? It doesn't matter that he lied about this. It doesn't matter that he was trying to show his high school boys naked pictures of Karen Reed. It doesn't matter that he illegally searched her phone. It doesn't matter that he lied about this and that. Trust us, he's a credible witness. And when he's the only one who uncovers a lot of the evidence, interviews the witnesses, makes these decisions what to do and not do, come on. The DA should be ashamed of themselves for relying on that guy. Just ashamed.
Imagine if he does plead the fifth. That would be amazing. That would be
complete disaster. But I also think, look, they're going to try to call him, but just again, knowing what we know now, and if you remember, the judge was musing the other day, well, what if they don't call Proctor? Now, if the judge knew something we didn't know at the time, to wit, what we learned today, you know, the judge, at least being an intelligent lawyer, might also be thinking, like, how in the hell is this guy going to be allowed to testify if he has counsel? But, you know, he's going to have legal problems. And if this guy was consulting me, it wouldn't be popular. I get it. But I'd be telling him, you know what, you're going to keep your mouth shut. Because are you really going to let him answer questions about searching her phone and what he was doing? I mean, I don't know what they expect to accomplish with that.
Going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Mazza Media, what do you got?
Well, that footage that Sarah had on his police cruiser that they, Lally wanted to have played in court today was not too favorable for them, considering that all the footage showed was Karen Reed organically and frantically reacting as someone who did not murder someone would when she was absolutely shocked. There is a clip in that footage that was shown today, and I was online earlier. I had my show going around 5 o'clock today, and me and a few people that are actually tuning in right now went over it thoroughly a couple times. And you see a police officer instinctively go to console Karen when he's going to tell her the news about what happened.
Of course.
The moment she finds out what happens, her hand goes to her mouth and she turns around and she's just walking all over the place frantically. That is the most organic reaction that someone realizing that a loved one is dying or has died could possibly ever have. And it's for Adam Lally to even allow that footage to get shown when the jury is watching. How could a jury watching that footage, regardless of whatever they were trying to show today, for whatever their point was, when a jury is watching that, you are seeing Karen react not like someone that's trying to cover someone up. She would have been a lot more quiet. She would have been a lot less shocked. And another thing that I picked up on, her reaction time and the way she is so focused and engaged in every word that cop is about to tell her is so crystal clear of a person that doesn't know what happened and is hanging on to every last word that cop's about to tell her because she needs to know. She was so engaged in that conversation. Someone that was not, someone that had perhaps maybe killed someone on purpose would have never had such an organic reaction. When you watch that footage, it's like it is actually, as someone is like myself that believes so strongly that she's innocent, it is still shocking to see how shocked she reacts to finding out the news of what happened. It's extremely compelling. Go ahead, Mark.
It's true. And again, it's indicative of just how flailing and desperate and profoundly weak this case was. I mean, you
Yes.
don't indict this unless you have the evidence. And I mean, look, motive is not a required element of a crime. But most prosecutors want to have a reason to tell the jury this is why the defendant did it. A theory, again, and we are being led to believe that the theory of this killing is that because, like couples all over the world, married, unmarried, whatever, that this woman who is, for all intents and purposes, living with him, helping taking care of his nieces and nephews who he tragically was taking care of, who I saw today, or at least from the opening, I think I got this. They had planned vacations in the future. Don't underestimate the significance of that. That shows that they're a couple, okay?
Exactly.
And they're planning things. Yeah. Now, but they argued that night, and she accused him of cheating. And from what Lally says, she flirted with another guy. And so from that, you are to be led to believe that she decided, well, naturally, the thing I will do is, preferably, by the way, in the middle of a raging blizzard, I might add, just plow this guy down, leave him for dead, go home, drive around, come back, and then, as you said, have what? This is a fake reaction, like to your point, Mazza, like how organic it was is the word.
If she had faked that entire reaction, beyond the animated response and the way she was walking around, I mean, just the instinctual reaction, just the way she would react to every little moment was so spot on that even Meryl Streep, Angelina Jolie, and Julia Roberts couldn't have got that kind of reaction time.
Can I add something else too about all of this? And again, her lawyers and the DA, more than anyone, have known what the evidence will be for the longest time. For us, we're just kind of, you get little nuggets here and there, or stuff comes out in court. And this is another example of how dumb Wendy Murphy is. And I go back to the original tweet that I saw from her that got me all, who is this woman, and needing to learn about her and whatnot. And it was the tweet where she basically said, this woman is not going to testify because she's guilty. Her lawyers know she's guilty. The jury's going to know she's guilty by not testifying, and the public should assume she's guilty. Okay. Normally, defendants don't testify. They shouldn't. I mean, the number of clients that I have called as witnesses over however many years could probably count on one hand, because you're doing an assessment of the case and whatnot. And knowing what you know about this case, okay, these are good lawyers. They've been around the block. They know what they're doing. They're winning, and they knew that they were going to be winning. They knew that there's no there. So why would you throw Karen Reed up on the stand and risk that? Not that she's going to lie or perjure herself, but when you call a defendant to testify, you are doing something that jurors are not supposed to do, but they do. The trial then becomes a referendum on, what is she telling me and does it make sense? And even if she's not admitting guilt or this, the jury loses focus, which is, does the DA have proof beyond a reasonable doubt? So, I mean, if you're winning, I mean, they're basically asking the defense, who, has a hand of 19, to get hit in a poker game. Why would you do that? There's no need to do that. She's going to win. It's just stupid. And it just shows you how stupid Wendy Murphy is.
And today, I mean, she's even saying it today. She's saying this crazy stuff. The terrible defense means she's going to prison. It's just,
oh boy. I mean, Adam Lally basically handed him the case, and the defense only had an opening statement this morning. That was it.
This is so stupid for so many reasons. His only defense is that the investigation was biased and inadequate. The problem with this dummy is that she doesn't understand that is the theme of the case that the entire defense is going to flow from. That is the lawyer doing what he's supposed to do, saying, I have a theme, and everything is going to flow from that theme. So when she says, oh, you're not attacking the medical evidence or the forensic evidence from the car, his theme is going to be, well, that's what Proctor is going to tell you. And let's go back to Proctor and who he is. So when they're basically making, I hate to do this, they're making Proctor almost like the Mark Furman here. Okay. Except in the OJ case, Mark Furman framed a guilty guy, but they're basically making everything flow from what they did and the corrupt investigation. And when she basically says, oh my God, she should have just said, I did it, and I was so intoxicated that I didn't have the mental state, is what she's saying. And then she's telling you what the sentence would be. And, her jealousy of real lawyers kicks in once again. And the other part, she says this is malpractice. By the way, criminal lawyers generally don't get sued for malpractice. So Wendy, I know you fancy yourself an expert in criminal law and a former prosecutor, but lawyers, we call it ineffective assistance of counsel, Wendy, not malpractice. So
she's National Enquirer quality when it comes to being an attorney anyways.
No, she's a clown with a law degree. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
she's only an attorney on TV.
Right.
But I really, and I
mid-afternoon judge, mid-afternoon attorney.
I made a joke about this earlier today, but Wendy also fancies herself as a defender of women, against misogyny, sex abuse, and whatnot. Somebody needs to ask Wendy Murphy, can you comment on Proctor and his behavior and what he did, how disgusting it was, saying that she should kill herself. And by the way, I'm digging for nudes and I'm going to share them with my buddies. Right, Wendy? You're appalled by that, I assume.
Yeah,
probably not. Right.
Maybe next time the audience corrected it for me. She plays an attorney on TV. So maybe next time she plays an attorney on TV, she'll care about those nudes.
I don't know. Maybe not so much anymore. Somebody sent me something today where she was saying, I was invited to be the court TV trial consultant, but I don't want to argue with the defense. So I declined because there's nothing to argue. There's nothing. She's guilty. Everybody knows it. So, I mean, let's just go straight to sentence and execution. This lawyer is, I mean, I know this is getting repetitive with her and the material writes itself, but she is so vile, so offensive, so odious. She just needs to go away and, crawl back under the rock from whence she came. I mean, it's awful. There's no place for her in this, and all she's doing is trying to gin up the supporters who think somebody's being wrongfully prosecuted. Why does that bother her so much, by the way? I mean, ask yourself why she's so bitter. And if it comes down to, she doesn't like the lawyers, grow up.
She doesn't like Yannetti, apparently, is what
Well,
people said. I don't know.
She could probably learn a lot from him in terms
apparently she used to work with him. And apparently some people said they got along. I don't get it, but
well,
Sounds like she asked him out after work and he said no.
Maybe it's jealousy.
Well, to some extent, I assume it has to be jealousy. I mean, he's a real lawyer. He did a nice job today. And, Wendy is, working for free on making tweets about, nonsense. So, one guy is a working lawyer getting very big, important cases. The other one is screaming at anyone who will listen, even when she's muted. I saw that video for the first time. By the way.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was one of the best videos ever.
Wow, that was something else. But
I forgot to mute myself. But she's a piece of work. People are having some laughs in the chat. So today was day one. They got through 2.5 witnesses, basically, and opening statements. They said like 6 to 8 weeks this trial will go on. Do you think it will go that long? How long do you think this will actually go on?
I mean, I don't know, but I mean, prosecutors always overestimate this. And it does. I mean, look, this is a slog. It's not going to be over in a week, not going to be over in 2 weeks. But at the end of the day, this is an allegation of murder in which they claim a drunk woman backed her car over someone. And they claim, they have some forensic evidence and there's a few of this back stuff. And of course, the defense is going to put on, a hell of a defense here. But how that translates into 2 months, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. And I think that's good for the defense. I mean, just boom, boom, boom. Keep the jury focused, keep them interested. And again, you want to be the party who gives the jury, follow my lead. We're the credible ones. We're the honest brokers. We're the good guys. And we're the ones you can trust. We're the ones who actually believe what we're arguing. And don't underestimate that either, even without the words. One lawyer is arguing today who, looks like he wants to scratch his hands and stare at the floor and roll up into a ball on the floor and go to bed. And the other guy is saying it's an honor and privilege to represent this woman. And you could read his body language. We're pissed. We're angry. And we're pissed and angry because she's innocent and she's framed. And that resonates. And then he backs it up with, his preview of the evidence or arguing, as it were, what the evidence is. But he got away with it. So good for him for that. But juries follow that stuff. And they see when the defense is not wasting time cross-examining witnesses who don't need to be cross-examined, which side is backing up their promises with actual evidence and facts. And, I think it's pretty clear at this point where this is
Should be noted that Wendy Murphy backed out of a court TV appearance tonight because Nick Rocco was the guest. Nick Rocco reported that on LTL earlier tonight.
Well,
that's hilarious.
If anything good comes from this, maybe it will be just the complete shaming of her and having her disappear from, calling herself an expert. I mean, look, she has a right to an opinion like anyone else. And if she wants to scream and yell, even when she's being muted, God bless her. But the problem with her is she's exploiting her law degree. Okay. She's using that as a false basis of credibility to say, listen to me. I understand. I'm a lawyer. I know something you don't. And then when somebody disagrees with her, her response is, you're an idiot, you're a moron, or in the case of a lawyer, ironically, you should be sanctioned, which is...
Yeah, she made the comment once, don't make a mockery out of the justice system, the Turtle Boy on Surviving the Survivor around last September. And she had a whole statement about how there was human hair found, and then it turned out that it wasn't human hair. And it's just, she's totally out of her gourd.
And she's been sanctioned twice. I mean, that's making a mockery out of the justice system right there. She's done it.
Well, as lawyers will tell you, any lawyer who practices in federal court, and Wendy probably doesn't, except for the times that she tries and miscites the court and then gets sanctioned, will tell you that there is this thing that she gets sanctioned under. It's Rule 11 that, I know we mentioned before. And every lawyer who steps into a federal courtroom is always conscious of Rule 11. It's a big deal. I mean, it is literally, there is a mechanism in place that you, as a licensed attorney, if you engage in frivolous or unethical behavior, you can get whacked under Rule 11, and that can lead to many bad things. And I don't know anyone who's ever gotten Rule 11 before, let alone, Wendy, who, took 2 headers under Rule 11. So, I mean, it's insane. Look, I don't know what her story is with Court TV, but or what other areas that are inviting her to go on, but hopefully it'll be less, because it adds nothing to the public discourse. And there are many lawyers they could find, by the way, who, if they want to be hired guns and just have no moral compass in this and say, oh, you put me on TV, I'll say she's guilty just because I feel better about it. Even if you have to resort to that, I assure you there are many other lawyers to find other than, Wendy Murphy, for sure.
Absolutely.
Of course, the photo that's circling the internet right now tonight is Grant Smith Ellis allegedly driving with marijuana. He's smoking marijuana.
It's making us look
And
bad.
Allman posted that, yeah.
Making us cannabis consumers look bad. What a
Oh,
moron.
geez. Someone's like, that's an OUI.
Was this like right at court too? Like, was he doing this right around court?
I think perhaps it was on Jen Altman's page. I know I reposted a quick little video, kind of I added a little song.
How
to the photo.
dumb. Yeah. You're going to smoke a joint while you're
I
driving
will,
around the court where people hate you.
I think she should be shunned from commenting in terms of like using her law license, with one exception. I will confess that if Wendy and her son had a podcast or something to rant and rave and do this, I feel dirty saying this, but I'm going to say it, I would watch. I don't know.
Grant,
you look away?
You say that, but Grant has had a podcast at times, and it's
got to be. It's got to be.
But
you
know what he is. Mother and son might work. But it's funny when he's a guest, I think, on other people's shows, to see how the hosts have to handle him. It's like the Kevin thing. Have you seen that? You've seen that, Mazza, right?
Which one again? Sorry.
When Grant goes on Kevin's show.
Yes, I've seen that one. Yeah.
And Kevin's like trying to handle the dude. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
This guy.
Oh, man.
I was in the middle of my own very very intense hearing today in the Bronx, of all places. And during a break, what do people do? You naturally grab your phone and just start looking at whatever. And you look at some of this stuff, certainly today. And, I saw some of his, his analysis, if that's what we're calling it, of what was important today, and his wow and holy shit moment. And if he's being sincere in what he believes is important in this case, man, is this guy in for a rude awakening of where this is going. Because if he thinks it's important that, she left and came back, and, there's trooper video and she was doing things and she made a statement, and I mean, guy, get a grip. That's not the important stuff.
So we got early morning tomorrow, 9 a.m. court starts. I can't wait to see this cop get cross-examined and see what other cops they bring to the stand. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Well, who do they have? Do you know?
Well,
Joe
they have
Donuts, the cop.
Yeah, they got this one cop we know for sure, and then who knows? Whoever is on the list, I don't know who they're going to call.
I don't think the cross-examination of the first responding cop who sees this nightmare, obviously her distraught in the yard and freaking out over, her boyfriend essentially dead or close to dead, and acting, as you said earlier, organically concerned. I mean, it speaks for itself. You can certainly draw out a few points and say what's going on, but I can't imagine, unless this guy has a larger role in the grand scheme of things, much to do with him other than, as you said earlier, I think quite correctly, he's a sum gain for the defense. when all is said and done, if she's acting in that manner. She looks like a concerned girlfriend who just witnessed her boyfriend die or be close to death. I mean, what do you expect her to do? I understand too. I don't know if this was in evidence or I read this somewhere, that when the McCabe woman was out there, that she was very cold and not looking around and just kind of doing nothing. I don't know if that's accurate, and that the one of these other guys, Albert, I think, is a first responder, and he never came outside earlier when there was a crisis scene in the front row in his lawn. He never came out to take a look.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy to see
That's
if he.
It's
again,
when I saw the footage today of Sarif pulling up. I mean, you just see the crime scene when it's one thing to visualize it, but when I actually saw, you see all the blue lights just flashing everywhere, police cars arriving, people outside the house. It just, even more so than when I visualized it in my head all these months, it just makes a bigger case. I mean, the house is how far away from the street? I mean, not far.
Yeah. No, it's jarring. And, when you see some video of, a dead body and whatnot, it can be very, for a lot of the jurors, especially, they've never seen anything like that. And it becomes, holy shit, this is really a big thing. But, if they're just going to call, that cop's going to get crossed. And then I don't know when they plan on going into anything important, but the real question is, I mean, what are they going to do with Proctor? At some point, you have to deal with this, right? I mean, he's the case detective. He's the main guy, and that means if he's going to testify, it'll be sooner than later. And the thing that I'd be regretting if I were the DA is why was the jury told about this by the defense? And more importantly, he should be concerned that jurors are saying, why am I learning this from the defense when this is their lead investigator, their key witness, or one of their key witnesses, and he's not telling me this? I mean, it's like trial practice 101. Deflate the balloon, be credible, confront your problems in the case, and work with it. And he apparently just, what do you want to wish it away and hope it doesn't come out? I mean, that's just giving the defense more fodder for the cover up. It's terrible. I don't understand what this guy was doing today.
Have you ever taken on a case that involved a police cover up before? If you're allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, I examined a witness today in a hearing where the guy absolutely perjured himself, and that's an allegation that's been made. It was even in the news down on WNBC tonight in a hearing that's going on. I mean, it happens a lot. What doesn't happen a lot is seeing an orchestrated alleged cover up that has so many different threads, and again, feels more like Alabama in the 1940s and 50s than suburban Boston now. I mean, it feels like, I know Canton's not the biggest place in the world, but it's not the smallest place in the world either. And the idea that, like, the local constable can just wink, wink, and we'll do this. And we'll throw it on her. I wish they would have called her a patsy today. That, to me, that's a word that they know. I did hear he said tunnel vision, like we talked about last night. I did hear that, which I think was correct. But so yes, you do see corrupt cops. It's not that common, but you don't usually see it to this level, this many examples, and you don't see it. With Proctor, it's shocking. I mean, I had a case a few years ago. It was only a DWI case, but the police officer in that case lied through his teeth about what he observed the client do on taking these portable breath tests and all these examinations. And it was on body camera. And the guy was such a dope that while his partner was driving back to the precinct, his body camera was on and he had his phone in front of him. So this idiot had his body camera literally on his phone, and you could see him texting to his partners, this girl looks like a stripper, and like very similar stuff, really sexually inappropriate stuff. And, oh, look at her, and let's see what we find here. And, all this came out, and that case had to be dismissed. The guy testified at a hearing. He got torpedoed, and the DA stood up in the middle of the hearing and said, "We quit." Like, we're done.
That's the appropriate response from a DA, right? I mean, in a case like that,
It is, but what's disturbing here is they don't have a strong case against Karen Reed anyway. They've known about Proctor for the better part of 2 years, and they've just kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, whatever, we'll deal with it. It really doesn't impact us and what we're doing. And, after Proctor, I would tell you that the people who this reflects the worst on is the district attorney. Okay. They should be ashamed of themselves for this, because in particular, in light of all the problems that they have with this case, in light of the fact that Proctor is their guy, and you got to dance with the one you brung to the dance, essentially, that's your guy, to go forward with him, given the lack of other evidence, makes it even worse. I mean, look, if there was a video of a defendant barreling over a guy and then pulling up and doing it again, and a strong case, I think at that point you'd say, I don't really care about Proctor as it relates to this case. He's still a bad guy, but he matters in this case. It's already a circumstantial case. It's already a circumstantial case that doesn't have much evidence to support it. What little evidence it does have to support it, unfortunately for them, it goes back to Proctor and those people. So it's all going to fall back to the defense theory of a cover-up. That we haven't even gotten into, the defense experts who are going to say this wasn't a car accident, these injuries. O'Keefe's body doesn't have injuries that I think even lay people would say are consistent with this kind of trauma. It's just problem after problem after problem. And how in the hell that they go up here and say, we're ready for trial, and we'll take this case, we'll go with Proctor, and we're not worried about this, and we don't see a conflict, as I think somebody just put up. If you can't see a conflict here, then the best thing you can do is go back to the eye doctor, because it's right in front of your face.
right? What are your final thoughts tonight, Mazda Media?
Well, I'm very much looking forward to tomorrow. I'm very much looking to cross-examinations, and my big concern right now is Michael Proctor. Is he staying at a Motel 6 tonight and eating cup noodle soup out of a styrofoam cup? Cup noodle. That's the joke. Noodle. Yeah, that's the joke.
I know all about that.
Okay.
I went to Bridgewater State College.
Okay, you're
all
good.
about the noodle soup.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, this is heavily in the. I mean, like I said, the defense, all they did was make an opening statement today, and there were more than enough instances where Adam Lally was up there all by himself questioning various individuals, and there was more than enough, whether he intended it or not, evidence that just played in the favor, that was presented by even Adam Lally, that played in the favor of Karen Reed and the defense. And I just can't imagine what Alan Jackson, Eliza Little, and David Yannetti are going to do when they have their opportunity to get up there and start doing some cross-examination. And I just can't wait to see Alan Jackson tomorrow morning. And it's going to be some fine work to watch. That's all I got to say.
Can't wait. And Attorney Mark Bederow, what are your final thoughts for tonight going into tomorrow?
Tell you this, a trial, at a trial, the district attorney is the quarterback. Okay. They drive the case, they open, they call the witnesses, they go first, they set the tone. And if you're the prosecutor and you come out as weak as they came out and let the defense go on the offense and essentially put the case on trial right away, and you have no pushback to that, and then you call, as you guys both mentioned earlier, a series of witnesses on the first day who are, they don't really do anything. If anything, they are trending as defense witnesses. After one day, I mean, what do you think these jurors are thinking? Now, they're not supposed to be deliberating or thinking about the case, but as human beings, human nature would tell you, wow, they really don't have much. And these guys appear to have a lot of reasonable doubt. And you never, ever want to come out weak. You, as a prosecutor, you come out strong. An opening statement is supposed to make a defendant say, shit, I don't like this. now what? Even though you shouldn't feel that way, it's in some ways, you hear bad things and it sounds articulate, it sounds powerful by nature. You get nervous. And when you heard what you heard today, I don't know why you would feel anything other than more confident, which is then bolstered by the defense opening, which is then bolstered by the weak prosecution witnesses. And that's not disrespectful to O'Keefe's father as a weak person or weak witness. I mean, from an evidentiary standpoint, he's not a significant witness in proving anything in the case. I go back to, they took a standing A count. I mean, I don't know how they're going to recover that ground. I mean, they gave up that critical yardage right away, and the defense took it. They grabbed it by the horns. And the only thing the jury's thinking about right now is, my God, maybe there really was a cover up. And when they start saying, you know what, this could be, those are words that are consistent with reasonable doubt.
That's what we're
And
looking for. I mean, that's where I think it's going. It's got to go there. Reasonable doubt.
I mean, even before we heard any of this, I didn't think that she would get convicted, just that there would be any basis to. But after hearing the presentations today and what, presumably the evidence will be and the manner of presentation, I think the day could not have gone any worse for the DA. It couldn't. I mean, a terrible start.
Terrible. I want to thank you both for being here tonight. Thank you
Sure.
so much, Attorney Mark Bederow. Hopefully, we'll maybe follow up with you again tomorrow night or the night after.
No, listen, I'm happy to, to talk to you guys regularly. I find this fascinating, and I feel terrible about all this too. I mean, I'm open-minded before we go. If somebody could convince me that a defendant is guilty, I'll say, I'll listen to you. But, there's no there yet. Show me something. I mean, so yeah, you let me know when you want to talk. I'll be glad to talk.
I saw this one tonight, Mark, so that's great news.
Yeah, we'll do it late after Celtics game too.
Very worried about Porzingis. He got hurt tonight.
Yeah,
so,
right calf strain, right calf tightness, they said. So
well, that's better than Achilles, but
that's correct.
It didn't look good at the time. So
no,
knock on wood.
Yep.
But yep, they won. So
there we go.
And
free Karen Reed.
You free Karen Reed. I got something else for you, Mazza Media too. Oh, thank you so much, Attorney Bederow, for being here tonight. Mazza, we got Turtle Boys, his latest court appearance that no one got the video. The video is finally out. We're gonna stream that right after we get off here. We're gonna stream some more on the Young Jurks tonight.
Nice.
So I want to see that. Have you seen that? I mean, that last court appearance was like a blackout.
No, I didn't see it at all, but I know it went well.
Yeah, I know. So now we get to watch it. So I'm gonna start that up at 11 p.m.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out.
If you want to stay up late tonight.
Oh, I'll be up late. That's for sure. I'm gonna watch. I'm watching the Lakers. I'm hoping the Lakers get eliminated tonight, so I'll be up for a while. So
awesome. Other people want to see it too. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight.
No problem. Shout out to Kelly Reed, by the way. Kelly's awesome, and she's doing a great job. Popcorn champion.
And Nick Rocco's in the chat. Micro Dots, some great people. Jeno, thank you all too for being here tonight. My name's Mike Crawford. You know what I got to do before I leave is I got to do the super chats. You guys did a lot of super chats. I couldn't keep up with them. Luda's mom did a bunch of them. Thank you so much. Brittany Fitzgerald did one too. Thank you so much, Brittany. I couldn't ask all these questions. We tried. There was so many questions coming in. I want to thank you all. But also some new members tonight. We posted those on the screen and some Venmos. I want to shout those people out. Kathleen gave $5. She said, great shows. Also Lorene, thank you so much. She said, being great. Thanks for all you do. She sent us 25. Thank you so much, Lorene. Thank you, Kathleen. K. Trisha F sent $20. She said, thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you so much, Trisha. Jim Flynn sent $10. Thank you so much, Jim. Kelly Cronin sent 15. Thank you. Roxanne H sent $5. I think that was last night. Thank you so much. And also couple others, I think, on the Cash App. Let me just bring those up too. Dara Murphy, thank you so much. Sent $10 tonight. Thank you so much. Caroline Forth sent $10. Lisa C sent $10. Thank you so much, all of you. Wicked excited to see what happens tomorrow. Today was a great day of court. Got to take a break right now. Going to set up a new stream on the Young Jurks at 11 o'clock here. We're going to play Turtle Boy's recent court appearance at 11 p.m. right here on the stream. It's going to be a new link, so go hit the button again. We'll see you in a few minutes with Turtle Boy. Aiden Carney's latest court appearance coming up at 11.